If you're interested in the fate of the fig tree, why platypuses are the way they are and why God created them, and the martyrdom of the apostles, you should watch this or listen.
Before.
Have you?
Yeah.
I did it.
By an ex.
I stalked her.
By an ex.
That's how I got her
Levi.
here.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. This
You
guy.
ever heard of Stockholm Syndrome?
I had to, you know what I had to do? I had to block and delete all of our mutual friends.
You're absolutely kidding.
No.
Ooh, that's bad. That's creepy.
So
She eventually added everyone back, though.
No, I didn't.
All my friends back.
Oh. But I've dealt with my own crazy.
Okay.
That's all what I'm trying to say.
Oh, you're good.
I've dealt with my own crazy.
Yeah, I just because I didn't know how much you guys were used to like internet crazies. See, I have had a pretty colorful history with internet crazies, so I kind of know which ones are like unhinged versus like So
Didn't he try and go and like work at your place of work?
Oh, that's so weird.
He didn't just try. He was successful.
Oh, that's so weird.
I had to tell my boss that I could not work when he was working.
Ew.
And I soon quit.
How could did your boss know better?
So
Did you tell your boss?
Yeah. So
And he hired him?
No. Okay. Let me go back. So it was for Starbucks. It was when I worked at Starbucks. He worked at a different Starbucks. And our Starbucks occasionally needed more help.
I gotcha. I'm on board
And
now.
so we would call people from different Starbuckses to work. Well, he volunteered happily. And people who worked at his Starbucks would also, when they came over and they were working with me, they would ask me all kinds of questions. And it was just not a good situation. So I eventually had to quit. And it was so weird because I had a roommate at the time, and my roommate actually worked at his Starbucks too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Man, you were in like a nightmare scenario. That's like the worst.
We had
That's like
trespassers on our property shortly after he was hired.
Wait, what's that again?
We had trespassers on the property that I lived on, my roommate and I, shortly after he was hired at her Starbucks.
So he had people coming over to...
Or it was him. I don't know.
Maybe.
There was just a lot of stuff. And so
They
I had
hiding in your bushes. They're snatching your people up.
I still
Hide your
haven't.
James.
Yeah, I was about to follow up. I was like, wait a minute, I can't say that anymore. That's old YouTube. You're not allowed to even make that song.
I can.
Hide your wife.
Yeah, hide your wife.
Ben's got to hide his wife.
Trying to hug him. Hide your wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, I eventually had to block and delete basically all of our mutual friends because I just didn't want him to have any more information. Like he already knew where I lived, and he told my roommate he knew where we lived.
Oh
so I was like,
I don't have any creepy friends, just Ben.
Yeah, that's true.
It was not fun. It was a very, I was very skittish like during that time, just because
Sounds
I would
like
just
you had the right to be.
I just had a lot of weird stuff happening, and I was like,
There was a lot going on.
that was when I got a new job and I moved. I was like, I'm done.
It's kind of wild how one person can like
Derail.
pull up your whole life.
And it was really sad because it did feel like that, because like we had a lot of mutual friends and I still really liked them. And I was really sad but I didn't really see any other option other than deleting them and getting rid of them because I didn't want them to
reporting back.
Exactly, and you know what? The coworkers from his Starbucks probably didn't think anything of asking me questions, like he could have said something like, "Oh, I just would love to win her back," or something like that, and get the sob story. And then they're like, "Oh, well, I'm going to go work with her. Why don't I go talk to her for a little bit?"
That's usually where
And
an
it
abuser's
just
power
gets,
come
like,
from, though.
and it just gets like super creepy. Like they just don't even. I think that all of these people who were involved were mostly innocent. Like I don't think they had any malice, but it was clear by just all the different things that were happening that there was malice on his end. And
Yeah.
I just didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's kind of like how I camped out in front of Levi's bushes for a couple days.
He did give me a really scary. There was one of the friendship defining moments on if I decided if we were going to be friends anymore, where he did a prank like that. Though.
Oh, are you talking about the phone call?
I'm talking about
I don't know about this phone call. Please share.
yours is a real story. Mine is like
This, oh my gosh. So I had a cell phone at 15. I had an iPhone because I mow lawns. And so I didn't have any.
You were a rich 15-year-old.
Yeah.
He was. He sure
Yeah, because Dad made me work. Well, I guess he didn't make me, but he was like, oh,
He
you should
wasn't
get out
going
and
to
work.
give you a phone. So
That's true.
You were like,
that was
I'm
back in the
gonna
day though,
work
where
for it.
like that was back in the day that where not everyone had a phone. It's
That's
weird to
true.
think about,
Yeah.
but that was back in the day where like
And then the iPhone came out. I was like, this thing's cool. And I got it.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, so I'd only, like when Levi and I would talk on the phone, I'd only talk to him on my cell phone. So one time I was like, he'll know it's a prank if I like star 69 it.
I loved Star 69 when I was a kid.
Star 69.
I prank called people all the time, and there was a website that had like
Soundboards.
soundboards.
oh yes, oh yeah,
We got in trouble with that.
Those were the best though.
those were good times.
You know what? I kind of want to bring those back and prank call some of my friends.
I wouldn't. Those can get really misconstrued. We called Lily's dad, who is a cop.
I
Listen
call
to
like
this story.
Millie or something.
Yeah,
I
but
wouldn't
listen to
call
this
like
story.
somebody
We're gonna go through
that I
another
don't know
story.
well.
We're not
Yeah,
gonna
and then we'll
finish?
come back.
Oh my!
It's an inception of stories.
It is an
It's a
inception.
story inception. We called Lily's dad, who's a cop,
Oh, I forgot
with a Mr.
about
Rogers
this.
soundboard.
Oh, this was bad, Jamie. This
and
was bad.
Mr.
he's like,
Rogers?
yeah, and it was just fun.
He's a
We thought
cop,
it was
dude.
funny.
Dude, this is bad.
He's
Well-
a cop. That's a bad idea.
And he, we're talking to him, and then Mr. Rogers, and it was fine at first. And then the soundboard, it says, "I have your kitty," like your cat.
This is bad, Jamie.
He thought
He thought you were talking
someone
about
had
Lily.
found who he was and kidnapped Lily. And when I say that was the worst thing we could have done, it was bad.
That's so bad.
It was super bad.
So bad.
So be careful with the soundboards. Millie would always prank me. Her and Haley were pranking me
That's
all
why
the time
I would
with
prank
soundboards.
somebody
Yeah.
like Millie.
I
She
have
needs to
your
be- she
kitty.
needs to be pranked.
That would be an awful thing like to hear. I
Or
have
I'd
your
prank
kitty.
like
Yeah, in a
Josh.
Mr. Rogers soundboard. I have your kitty. You go, ooh, what?
Or I would prank call like Josh. I feel like Josh would be like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody, I wouldn't just prank call anybody. I'd
He
prank
was
call
the-
people who I knew would appreciate it.
You're still living back in 2003, man.
Yeah.
He
But
was
back-
thinking, he's like, man, is this going to be a real life version of Taken?
Yeah,
He
for real.
responds with, I have a very specific set of skills.
Oh, it was bad. And I feel bad because like that obviously wasn't the intention,
Right.
but it's obviously, it scared him,
Oh,
put
yeah.
him into a panic, which was horrible as a parent. Like that would be horrible. I felt bad about that.
Now you especially know.
Yeah. So back to the Levi's call though.
I might want to apologize to him real quick right now.
Yeah. Sorry, Pat.
Does he know that you did that?
Yeah, he knows. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Cause
So I'm sure you've already
we were like,
apologized.
oh no, this went, because when we realized what happened, we were like, oh no, we need to set it straight now. So we did, and Lily was there too. Lily had to go home immediately.
Oh, Lily Bear.
all's
Poor
forgiven
Lily
though.
and Pat.
But yeah, so I got this bright idea to call Levi on our landline, and I'm just gonna freak Levi out. So I'm on the phone with him. I don't know. I was just bored. We were talking on the phone. I get this idea. And so,
And he's 100% right. The star 69 thing would have completely tipped me off.
yeah, I just knew it would tip Levi off. So I was like, I'm going to call him. So I call him on the landline, and he's like, "Oh, this weird number's calling me." And I go, "Oh, you should pick it up." And he's like, I don't want to. I don't know who it is. Like, "Oh, you should just see who it is." And so then he'd pick it up on the other line. I've
totally done this.
I go, "Hello, Levi."
He didn't say Levi. He didn't say that, but he did the voice. He did the voice.
Exactly
and this
said.
is before I knew that Ben's like his voice repertoire. So this was new to me. And I'm like, "Ben, I know it's you." And he's like, "Look out the window." I'm like,
"What?
No, Ben, you're not gonna do this. Look out the window, Levi. He probably didn't say Levi, but I did. I looked at the one. I'm like, "There's no one freaking there." And I called Ben. I'm like, "Hey."
Or no, you were on the other line with me, remember?
Yeah,
And
so I
then
switched over to Ben. And I'm like, "Ben, this weird guy's calling me, telling me to look out the window." And Ben's like,
first you accused me. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
yeah, he was very convincing.
I was like, "What are you talking about, Levi?"
He's a really good liar.
Apparently. I was like, "Oh." So then I was like, "Call again." He's like, "Ben, it's the same number." I go, "See what they want." So he answers again. "Levi, I'm outside your window." "No, you're not. No, you're not. Be quiet. Be quiet." Ben. And then I got the bright idea. I'm going to tell Levi what he's doing right now. So I start to tell him, "How is your bed comfortable that you're sitting on?" Or like something to that effect, like it looks comfortable. And it kind of freaks Levi out. And this weird guy, Ben, if it's you better stop it. I'm like, it's not me. So then Levi believes me. And then he starts telling me what he's doing. Like, I'm going to get my baseball bat. And so I call him again. He's like, "Oh no, he's calling again." I was like, "You should answer it."
Oh my God.
He answers it.
Levi, you're so freaking gullible.
"The baseball bat won't help you, Levi." And that did it. That really did it. That scared him so.
Like I said, there were several moments in our friendship where I really had to wonder, why am I friends with these guys? That was one of them. I was really debating. I was like, what am I doing? I'm either a glutton for punishment, or like, what is this? This is not a give and take friendship. This is a torturous friendship. It was that when there's another one, but we'll save it for another time. So
I'm crying.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
That was a great, horrible prank.
He almost had me on the verge of tears.
That's your title drop.
Yeah. I would never, as is mentioned, I would never do something like that again. But holy cow, that was so ate up.
He almost had me on the verge of tears. I was so scared. I'm like, this person with a weird, freaky voice. And at this point, I'm into tons of horror movies. So this is a very believable scenario for me. I'm like, this seems real. This seems like where I die. Best friends.
Love it.
But we have grown.
You guys want the story?
Yes.
There was a time where Jesus was walking around with his disciples.
Mm-hmm.
And
how many disciples did he have at this point?
12.
Oh,
he had the 12. I don't know. There might have been a bunch of people following him at this point. I don't know exactly. I'd have to go back and dig and look.
Fun fact, Jesus had more than 12 disciples.
Yes. At some points. Other points when
Not
he said,
always.
"Will you eat my flesh
That's
and
when
drink my blood?"
That was the time
everyone
where they were like,
left
no.
except the 12.
For what it's worth, that is a very challenging moment.
Yes.
I could see where a lot of them would be like,
Many became offended and left. I don't know if I want to do that.
it would be a very challenging moment.
Yeah. But they're walking around and Jesus sees this tree, this fig tree, no fruit. And so instead of just walking by, and I've heard different, like, I guess it can't, like, people say that it wasn't even in season at this point,
Okay.
which I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless, the account says that it didn't have any fruit. So instead of just walking by and being like, oh yeah, neat, not even paying it mind, he looks at it and he says, from now on, you're not going to bear any fruit. And it withers up, goes away, dies. And the apostles were, or the disciples at that time, they were like, what? Blew their mind. So that's my story today.
What was the significance of that?
I think the tree represented, there's a lot of different trains of thought on it. Mm-hmm. It's representative, I think, of John chapter 15, where it says, with a tree that doesn't, or a branch that doesn't bear fruit, it'll be tossed in the fire because it's not good for anything. And so I think it's an illustration showing, like, you're not really good for anything if you don't bear fruit in your life. If the word of God isn't bearing fruit in your life, it's not useful for the kingdom work.
Okay.
And so I think was the illustration. It's there to just wither up and be burned in the fire. So I think that's what the illustration was. Other people say, other people talk about representing Israel or Jerusalem, which I don't know.
So there's a lot of different biblical trains of thought on this specific moment.
There's just a few, yeah.
Okay.
There's just a few, like what it represents. But
now the fig tree in that time, was that particularly like important to that area or something? I kind of wonder if that symbolized some importance to because I'm sure it tells where they were at.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it was like it's in the region there in Israel, obviously. I don't know what the significance behind, like, if there was a cultural significance of the fig tree. That'd be an interesting thing to find out.
But I know figs were very commonly eaten during that time period. So like they were a very well sought out fruit.
Yeah.
So.
And they were easy to get a hold of.
Yeah.
But you already know where I'm going.
ChatGPT. Oh my gosh.
I was like, is that the episode replaying?
Yeah.
The first thing that my mind went to was, it doesn't line up with what the word says about who God is, but it's just really interesting because I'm sure other people's minds will go to this too. But like, because Jesus had the power and authority to make that tree barren, can he make humans barren?
You mean like dried up and withered up? Because the tree was already barren.
Well, was it barren or was it just not in season?
See, that's where I don't know. I've heard it wasn't just in season.
So this is interesting. The fig tree in Israel has deep symbolic meaning in biblical and historical context. It often represents Israel as a nation.
There you go.
In the Bible, the fig tree is frequently used as a metaphor for Israel's spiritual and national condition, peace and prosperity. Sitting under one's own fig tree symbolizes security and blessing. That's kind of interesting. Spiritual fruitfulness or lack thereof. So what you were saying. Jesus' cursing of the barren fig tree symbolized Israel's failure to bear spiritual fruit despite religious appearances. And last but not least, God's judgment and restoration. The fig tree's flourishing or withering was often used to depict God's blessing or judgment on Israel.
There you go.
Okay.
So it did have a cultural significance, and him cursing it was like, if it's not profitable, it gets withered. It gets cast out and it gets destroyed.
So that was a pretty significant moment.
Yeah.
The apostles were like, uh-oh.
This doesn't seem good.
Well, this is a bit of an omen, huh?
Yeah. Like he's ushering in a new kingdom in a new way. I think too, like it could have been a foreshadowing too of like, hey, it's not just for Jerusalem. It's not just for Israel that I've come either.
Well, he even says that in one of the parables.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, the feast, the dinner that he holds.
Yeah, he bid the people to come. They didn't come, so he went out to the highways and hedges.
And had everybody come.
Yeah.
And that poor one guy who wasn't dressed for it. I'm not going to lie. When I read that parable, I always kind of feel bad for that guy. He seems like really confused. Like I was,
What? Oh, there was a dress code? I didn't get it.
That's like John Travolta in the meme with John Travolta where he's like,
but I just feel bad for the guy in the scenario.
I still feel bad for him.
Can't help it.
There's a couple people in the Bible I really feel bad for. There you go. Some things I don't understand still.
Right.
yeah.
But that's where the studies come in.
Yeah, that's where
when
studies
you
come
do
in.
get to understand.
So one day we will cover the Baldy, and I will understand it one day.
Go up, thou
One
bald
day.
head.
Yeah, one day. But it's hard because I'm running out of obscure Bible stories.
We're covering a lot of them. We've
We've
covered
covered
a lot.
quite a bit. There's been what 20 this 23rd episode. We've covered quite a few.
Yeah.
Question
So-
is, where do we go when we're out of the weird Bible studies?
We go into church
history.
history.
Which we've done some church
Yeah, we've done
history.
some
So
church
wait a
history.
minute. Is our podcast going to have arcs?
Yeah.
So we're going to have
Seasons.
seasons.
Season
There
2.
you go. So we are coming up on the end of season 1, which
Yes.
is weird Bible stories.
Yeah.
And season 2 will be church history.
Well, we've done church history, though. We've done quite a few church history
a few.
stories.
I'm going to miss the weird Bible stories.
Me too.
Because those are fun.
Me too. I hope there's just a time in heaven where the Lord just recounts what he thinks is the weirdest thing that people have done.
Well, you see, I can't even make the joke because we're on YouTube. I can't make any of the jokes of the weird things that we did.
I
But
don't know. I think the weirdest thing that he's done, the Lord's done, is the platypus.
Oh my gosh,
I
aren't they
agree
weird?
with that.
Can we talk about the platypus
yes.
for a minute?
Yes,
I was like
we
watching.
may.
It's funny that you bring that up. Recently, I've been watching platypus videos, and they're just like, it's funny because
That's really weird because we've been talking about and we've watched a few platypus videos just recently too. That's super weird.
They're
We've become
weird.
we're on a wavelength.
apparently so, yeah. Because I've been randomly looking at platypus videos, and like as a kid, you're like, oh, they're cute and fun. As
I
an
had
adult,
a Beanie Baby platypus. I loved it.
yeah, because
Oh,
they're
me too.
adorable. They're adorable. As an adult, you're like, how did this happen?
What did God do?
And I think that like they are made honestly to throw people off, to be like, because like you think, oh yeah, we've got animals figured out, and then there's the platypus.
Or maybe it was his first animal and he was like,
This beta
Let's-
run is alpha.
let's try all the things. And then he was like, this ain't working.
Let's go duck, beaver, and
It's honestly probably his favorite animal.
what's cool.
It lays eggs. I've got, because I can't remember all of the things.
Right.
It lays eggs. It oozes milk.
Oh my gosh, weird, right?
So they glow under UV light, which
Which is absolutely actually insane.
that is crazy. The males are venomous.
Yeah, apparently during mating season,
Their claws, they got little claws. Don't
they have a hollow spur on their hind leg connected to a venom secreting gland.
Like what?
And the venom is lethal.
Now, are they
Yeah.
considered mammals?
Yes,
See, that's how.
because they are covered in hair. That's hair, right?
ChatGPT that. I don't know.
I think they're considered a mammal.
I think so though.
Because they fit the criteria of a mammal, even though they lay eggs. The adults also don't have teeth.
I'm gonna
The
laugh.
babies do.
I don't know if the babies do. Hold on.
But apparently they use electrical impulses underwater like sharks do to locate objects and stuff. It's
Wait,
really
what?
weird.
They
yeah.
do?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The babies do have teeth, by the way.
Yeah, they are considered mammals. They're warm-blooded. They have milk production, even though it's weird. And you're right, they do have fur. I'm gonna look up if there's biblical significance of the platypus.
Probably not. Yeah. I looked up 9 interesting facts about platypus. Number 9th fact is they're real. Yeah. You know, though, if someone described that to you and you didn't have the internet and you didn't have knowledge of it, like you'd be like, you're absolutely lying. This is a jackalope situation.
Yeah.
I wonder if he had the same thought process in making a platypus as making one of those weird angels, just to show he can.
Could be.
Just his mastery over nature.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
mastery over nature. Like, look at this, guys. Everything you think is conventional, look at the platypus. It's unconventional.
Or better yet, just go to Australia.
Where everything is horrible.
Everything in
platypuses aren't
Australia.
horrible.
They're scary now.
Oh.
Now I know
They're
about them. They're
venomous.
scary.
Oh.
They're venomous.
You just devenom them. You just get a little bit of that venom out of there.
That's usually like
Painful.
painful or deadly to animals.
Oh, no. The platypus?
I don't know if it is for the platypus, but it can be deadly to other animals that are venomous.
To get rid of their venom?
Yes.
Oh, I hope not for platypuses. They're cute.
I don't know. You'll have to
Ask a
research
platypus.
it. You'll have to research it.
I'm going to go to the zoo now and see platypuses.
There isn't one at our zoo.
They don't have any platypuses at the Indianapolis Zoo?
No, you didn't know that?
Our zoo kind of bites. Do we have any cool animals at our zoo?
They have lions. They have elephants. They have cheetahs and giraffes and
Oh, yeah, they do have cheetahs.
sharks that you can pet.
We should eventually go there and record us racing the cheetah
Oh my gosh.
on a very special episode.
That would be a very special episode.
Oh, man. From fig tree to platypi. We gotta figure out the
Platypus
third
is a
part.
really, really interesting animal, though. Like, I've always just been really curious about it. Like, is that something where, like, was that his first animal that he created? And
I
he
like
was
your
like,
theory.
look at all the things that I can do. And then he was like, maybe I should separate some of these things.
It's like those people in games that create a character and just throw everything they can on it just to see
Yeah.
what the thing does. Yeah.
And then they're like, I don't know. This guy looks a little bulky. I don't know. The platypus seems a little bulky.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny nose. That's wild, though. It's weird that we were all looking at platypus videos. That's
That is
really
weird. But I think that's probably why he created him. I think you're dead on. Like, just to show he has mastery over it.
Yeah, that's
to
true.
kind of confound those people that think that they have, it all figured out. Because I mean, the platypus is like the absolute
Why does it glow under UV light?
it's the antithesis
Why is it a
of
thing?
everything.
Yeah. It is so weird. I used to love them as a kid, and I used to really like koalas. And they're both horrible little
Oh,
animals.
koalas are little douches.
Samuel loves
Little
koalas.
demons. Yeah, they're
Does
little
he?
demons.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, little drop bears.
They're not his favorite.
Little drop bears. They're demons.
They're not his favorite, but he talks about koalas a lot.
Like sloths, which is...
Look at videos of koalas growling. Oh, they're gross. They're gross little buggers.
I noticed that when I was going through the boys' stuff the other day, I noticed that Ben strategically hid the sloth stuffed animal that we have.
You don't like sloths?
I got it back out.
I hate sloths, actually.
You don't
Samuel loved that sloth, and you took it away from him.
You don't like sloths? They're fun.
No, I don't like them at all.
Well, I mean, they're a little gross, but they're
They're gross.
They are
get
gross.
moss. They're so gross. They get moss growing on them. And it's just like, why are you so gross?
Do you,
You know
conflate
what?
them with the sin?
God-
Probably. But
God
it just
created that
bothers me.
animal too, Ben.
Well,
You should not talk about his creation that way.
That's true. You can't have
I'm going to
favorites
talk about
or
the sloth
unfavorites.
about that. I'm definitely talking about
I
the
can't
sloth.
stand what are the macaque
Macaque, the
macaques.
monkeys.
Oh, I can't stand those little buggers.
Well, monkeys are gross. But
Not gibbons.
speaking of gibbons, I actually don't have a segue. I was trying. I don't have anything. I was going to go into the apostles and how they were martyred.
Okay.
Speaking of gibbons, we're going to talk about how the apostles gibbons their life away.
For Christ. Yeah, there you go.
Christ.
Wow. That was a really good one.
A little bit,
Wordplay there.
not very, what's the word? Respectful.
Yeah.
Not horribly.
Especially because especially in the early church, that was very high honor to be martyred.
Right.
Very high honor. And it wasn't like something you were allowed or supposed to seek out, but it was something that was super high honor. Like, it was incredible. But what's crazy is of the original, like of all the apostles, the original apostles, only John lived to old age.
If I'm not mistaken, he was one of the ones that was afraid of dying too.
Was he?
I believe so. I believe he was one of the people that Paul wrote. Oh, if I'm not mistaken.
To John?
No, I'm thinking of another one. There was one that was afraid of basically what was going on around, and Paul had to like write him a reassuring letter. And I believe that particular one eventually martyred. Like he went out and gave his life. He willingly did so.
I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure.
I think it was it wasn't Stephen. I don't think
Stephen was the first recorded person martyred.
Who was the one that ran out against that parade that was going on?
Timothy.
It was Timothy, I bet. I'm not gonna, I don't have the information offhand, but I believe it was Timothy that was actually initially afraid of, getting caught and tortured and all that stuff. And by the end, he was ready to go.
Most of them, I wouldn't blame most of the church. The Romans had a cruel and unusual way of torturing people, and martyring people. A lot of it was by wild beast in their Colosseum, like in Smyrna. Polycarp is actually a really popular one. I think we talked about in last episode, but how they threatened him with wild beasts, and he's like, nah, bro, that's fine. If they're like, well, if you don't think the wild beasts are bad, we'll burn you then. And he goes, just do it. Do what you're going to say. Like, get it over with if you're going to do it, basically. Mm-hmm. And so they burned Polycarp alive, and he was a bishop at the Smyrna church, mm-hmm. and just super well loved. He was an old guy at that point. And but the way he was martyred, you can look at one of the accounts in the Epistle of Smyrna. It gives that account of how he was martyred and like all the things that were leading up to that and stuff. And it was really interesting.
So if we go in order, how did Matthew, which I guess was Matthew, I think it was initially Levi was his name. It was changed, but
Matthew. You're right, though. Levi tax collector, also known as Levi tax collector.
Okay.
According to early tradition, passed down to us primarily through early church theologian Irenaeus and Clement of Alexandria, he preached the gospel to the Jews for about 15 years. What's that guy's name? Eusebius reported that before Matthew took the gospel to other nations, he first wrote the Gospel of Matthew in Hebrew for everyone. Mm-hmm. And then it's widely accepted that he went to Ethiopia on the Caspian Sea, which is not Ethiopia in Africa, just to clarify that. And then on to Persia, Macedonia, Syria. And we don't actually know a lot about his martyrdom, like what happened, but it's strongly suggested that his death occurred in Ethiopia. And one tradition states that Matthew was killed on the orders of the king of Ethiopia while the apostle was worshiping in church. Other scholars believe that Matthew was either burned, stoned, or beheaded. So it was probably one of those three. He was burned, stoned, or beheaded.
What about Andrew?
Andrew, he
was a disciple of John the Baptist, apparently, first.
So besides the information provided by the early church, theologian Origen, Eusebius is another, I guess, primary source of his martyrdom and stuff like that. And he tells us that he went to Scythia to preach the gospel. And that is basically in the region of Kazakhstan, Russia, and eastern Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
Kind of in that area.
Azerbaijan,
Georgia. Yeah, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, so on and so forth. He looked like he went to a ton of places.
What a life. What a life you'd have lived. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, you have seen things that just you would never believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's cool is the tradition of Andrew ministering in this part of the world is so integrated in the church history that he is recognized as the patron saint of the Ukraine and Russia church, or the Orthodox Ukraine and Russian church. Yeah, so he's recognized as their patron saint.
So I was just going back to Matthew. So the Caspian Sea is located between Europe and Asia. So the region Ethiopia, where that was south of the Caspian Sea, not the one in Africa, obviously, but okay,
I think so.
okay. That's just really interesting. We're talking about all the different places that they preached to, and he went all the way to the border, basically the border of Asia and Europe.
That's wild. Especially back in the day. Can you imagine the travel time?
Yeah.
There ain't no planes back then.
You're walking.
You'd be walking. And so these people were obviously very committed, which is crazy because like there are people who that claim it's false and all this other stuff. No one's dying for something they made up like that.
Right.
And doing this kind of stuff for something they made up like that.
Simon Peter?
Well, I haven't gotten to how Andrew was actually martyred.
Oh, okay. Do they actually know?
Scholars generally agree that Andrew was crucified at the order of a Roman governor in Patras, located in Achaia.
Good enough.
Andrew was bound with ropes on an X-shaped cross known as a decusate cross, and he was hung there for a very long time and suffered a prolonged death.
Oof.
His martyrdom took place during the rule of Nero near 60 AD.
Shoot.
So that was probably one of the worst ones maybe one of the worst ones that you could suffer, just a very long hanging on that X-shaped cross.
Gosh, I hit it on the second time.
So that would have been a rough one. Who's next?
Simon Peter. A fisherman and Andrew's brother called by Jesus while fishing.
Wait, did you guys work on this without me?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, he's just going in order.
Oh, okay.
It sounded professional though, didn't it?
I was like, what the heck? Is this when I was getting the boys down for bed?
Yeah.
That's called the Holy Spirit preparing it when we didn't.
I prepared this part. I even wrote down how to say some of these people.
Yeah, I prepared mine as well. Also, Andrew was a disciple of John the Baptist. He was one of the first to follow Jesus and brought his brother Peter. So that's why Peter is second.
Peter, often referred to as one like the head apostles, leader of the apostles, I should say. Well respected. There's a lot about Peter's history that is recorded.
Okay. He was the one who denied Jesus.
But you can look through some of this, or you can look it up yourselves and stuff. Like Tertullian talks about him. There's quite a few of written about him. But he basically, according to early tradition, Peter was crucified upside down near the present day Vatican. In the year of 67 to 68 AD.
Peter's interesting too, because you think about it, and he went from denying Christ to save his own life to being willing to accept whatever it took to profess him. Yeah,
and they say you can find Peter and Paul's grave still in kind of in Rome, or where they were.
The whereabouts.
Yeah, like under the St. Peter's Basilica. So that's where he was No, hers went out. Mine's
AI
about to go out.
Yeah, AI will be the last.
I have a camera.
But to go off of what you said, he cried and repented after the was it a crow or what is it?
Crow 3 times.
Yeah, after the third crow, because
it 3 times.
It reminded him, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that I did that," and so he.
But think of the character change that had to take place and the significance of what happened to completely about face like that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there'd have to be some significant change of who you are, what you did, all that. I mean, you want to change hers?
I'm changing mine. Go
Okay. But that's kind of where I mean, it's always impressive to think about because if I'm not mistaken, he was the one that swam to Jesus when he was on was that Peter? Was
he got on the water, I believe.
Yeah, he was just so changed and taken by that moment that he went from being willing to deny Christ to save his own life to being able to profess him and giving up his own life in one of the most wild ways and doing it willingly so.
Right.
There's a huge change there.
Who's next?
James, son of Zebedee, John's brother, also called while fishing.
In 44 AD, John, the apostle James, the brother of John, was beheaded during the time of Herod Agrippa I. That's in Acts 12.
Okay.
But there's really cool. Eusebius records the man who led James to his judgment was so moved by James' unwavering confession of faith that he himself became a believer and was beheaded together with James.
Oh, wow.
So that's a cool little tidbit. Eusebius, he's a church historian.
So the fifth one is Philip, called by Jesus directly in Galilee.
When Philip began his traveling ministry, he took the gospel to Phrygia, a region located that is known today as Central Turkey. His martyrdom is a well-established tradition, a well-established fact in church tradition. It doesn't say how he was martyred, though.
Really?
Just that he was. So I guess there's just that he was, but I don't know what the information is on it.
That's mysterious.
That is mysterious.
The next one would be Nathaniel, also known as Bartholomew, introduced to Jesus by Philip.
He took the gospel today, or to what we know today as Armenia. And according to Eusebius, basically he reported that Bartholomew had made disciples in India and that he'd given his converts the gospel of Matthew. India was a term that encompassed a large region including modern-day Yemen. Other accounts state that Bartholomew preached in Mesopotamia, Persia, Egypt, Laconia, a southern region of Greece, in a central kingdom in Asia Minor, on the shores of the Black Sea and in Armenia. But the tradition of him preaching the gospel in Armenia is so well established that he is recognized as the patron saint of that nation.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild. It's crazy. Each of the disciples kind of led like a legacy afterwards.
Absolutely, which is really cool. Apparently, he was. Tradition presents him as being either beheaded, crucified, or flayed with a knife, or skinned alive.
Oh, good. All good things.
Suffering a miserable death at the hands of pagans. Some assert that he was killed in India. However, the earlier tradition of martyrdom in Albanopolis is more likely.
After that would be Matthew. We already covered. Thomas Didymus, known for doubting Jesus' resurrection. Oh, he was the one that had to put his finger in the hole. Well, he didn't, but he was offered. Remember what he said?
I don't remember that, actually. What did he say?
Oh, I think this was the apostle, but basically he's like, I won't believe it till I see it and put my finger through the holes in his hand. And so Jesus shows up and offers, and he's like, no, never mind, I believe.
Never mind,
when push came to shove, he's like, oh, I don't know, never mind, I'm good.
And what's crazy is, like, you could look at how close these men were to Jesus before his death, how much they traveled with him, how much they got to know him. And the fact that he resurrects, it would be like if someone tried to claim that if I died and someone tried to claim that I was me resurrected, you'd be like, nah, bro.
Right. And that's exactly, like, that's the big thing is you even had people like, I think that people want to go back and say that these older generations were like stupid, like dumb, like they believe anything. But you have here somebody who's just doubting. I think that's where the term doubting Thomas comes from. Yeah. But you have people who are very willing to say, like, I'm not going to believe it till I see it. Like, I saw it happen. Like, I know what happened. There's no way this is true.
Yeah.
And yet you had a miraculous thing, a miraculous appearance of Jesus to Mr. Thomas here. And it changed him to the point where he's like, oh, I absolutely believe. And that's
Yeah.
where that phrase, what is it? It's, blessed are you that believe, but blessed are you that believe and seen, but more so those who haven't.
Yeah.
So paraphrase, I'm not sure that was the exact, but
Thomas is recognized as the apostle to India because of the long-held tradition that Thomas had brought the gospel to Kerala, an area of India, a territory located near the Indian west coast. This tradition is confirmed by the writings of a ton of early church writers and historians.
oh wow.
And he was killed near the city of Madras, speared to death by pagans who opposed his ministry.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That's a nasty way to go, too.
We got Jamie back.
Baby break is done.
So number 9 would be James, the son of Alphaeus, sometimes called James the Less. I wonder how James the Less happened.
Isn't that sad?
What does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know that. Why? I've heard of it, though.
Ooh,
James, son of Alphaeus, same James who was beheaded, was not the same James who was beheaded in Acts. According to a strong early tradition, James preached throughout Israel before traveling to minister to pagans in Egypt, where tradition states that he was martyred as a result of pagan opposition.
Wow.
They're not sure how he went.
The next one, number 10, Thaddeus, also called, I'm going to have trouble pronouncing. I'm going to need your reassurance on this one. Labius, in some accounts.
He traveled and took the gospel to Judea, Samaria, Syria, Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, Libya, often accompanied by Simon the Zealot. The two traveled to Persia, known in today's world as the country of Iran, to preach the gospel. Judah is believed to have been bludgeoned to death by local pagans who opposed his ministry.
After that would be Simon the Zealot.
That's a crazy one.
A member of the Zealot movement called later. It just cuts off there. Called later.
Yeah. Simon the Zealot, that's a crazy one. He actually traveled around with Jude for a little bit. But two early traditions state that Simon was sawn in half at Sunar, Persia, or in somewhere else, an ancient kingdom in modern-day Georgia.
Gosh, sawn in half.
An ancient Armenian historian, Moses of wrote that.
Good enough.
Yeah, I'm getting tired.
What was that again?
Wrote that Simon was martyred
That's how I'm going to start
somewhere.
doing it. If I can't pronounce it, I'm just going to...
Basically, the tradition is that he got sawn in half.
Shoot. The very last one. Well, actually, there's one and then a replacement.
Bonus is Matthias, who was chosen after Judas Iscariot in Acts chapter 1, verse 26. He ministered in Judea and then to the barbarians and cannibals into the interior of Ethiopia, Africa. One tradition says Matthias was killed in Sebopolis, a city in the northeastern region of Asia Minor, and was buried there. Other traditions place his martyrdom in Jerusalem. However, the strongest evidence points to his martyrdom in Ethiopia. Doesn't say how he died, though.
Wow. I also looked up the reason why James was called James the Less.
Why?
He was called James the Less to distinguish him from James the son of Zebedee. There are a few possible reasons as to the title. Younger or shorter?
Yeah, I've heard that it was because he was shorter.
That would be terrible.
He's just a little guy, so he's less than James.
Come on, James the manlet. We're going.
Manlet James. Poor James.
Yeah,
We
less
shouldn't
prominent.
say that.
You know what? I'm sure he
Poor
takes it in
James.
good humor. I'm sure
He
at that
was,
point
he was a hero of the faith.
he was. He's probably like, you know what? They were making these jokes back then too.
Did I talk about Philip already?
Yeah, you've hit them
Yeah.
all. It's wild how a lot of these were, if not recorded, like people were trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like they tried to follow the footsteps to see the fates of each of them.
Yeah.
And John's the only one.
Yeah, John's the only one that didn't get got. But the rest of them, I mean, they made amazing inroads for the gospel and spread the gospel. Obviously, like,
I can't believe how far out they went. Can you imagine that back in the day? You ain't got no planes.
Like, that's a cool legacy to leave. Like, you're the patron saint of Russia, you know, and that's a cool legacy to leave.
Yeah.
That's a really cool legacy to leave. And these people, you know, like, it's just insane, like, where they went and what they did for the gospel. And they're like, laying down my life is an honor if I died like Christ.
Well, and I think that goes back to the Peter thing. It's just there has to be I think people discredit how big the about face was.
Yeah.
Like when you go from denying Christ to scattering to everyone, you know, looking out for their own lives to suddenly everyone willingly going to these horrible fates.
Right.
And doing it, you know, joyfully so.
Right.
I mean, you had to have seen something huge for there to be that much of a difference.
Absolutely. You would have to have seen like the power of God, you know. John, in 1 John, he says, you know, we've tasted, we've experienced, we've felt, we've touched all, you know, we've experienced Christ.
Right.
And to experience Christ like that, and I believe every Christian has the opportunity to experience Christ and to know him in such a way that touches you in a way to push you to movement. Baby's crying. Is that Zion or Samuel?
Samuel.
Oh no, Sam?
Wonder why he woke up.
You want to end it real quick?
He won't be going back to sleep. So I think this is me peacing out.
Well, we can all peace out.
Yeah, I think
short
we're gonna end
episode, but you know what? If you don't know Jesus Christ, he died and he rose again. That's undisputed fact. And all you have to do is put your faith and trust in him. The Bible says that those who call on the name of the Lord, they will be saved. It also says if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus Christ died and he rose again, you shall be saved. So I want to encourage you that Christ came to die for you. And you may be sitting there listening to all this and being like, you know, this is wild, or this, you know, something speaking to your heart though that says, you know what, I need to give my life to Jesus. And that's the Holy Spirit drawing you. And I would encourage you to take that step of faith and say, you know what, Jesus, I repent for my sins. I'm sorry for my rebellion against you. I turn from my ways. I ask that you forgive me. I believe that you died and that you rose again to save me from my sins. And if you made commitment to that commitment to Christ, I encourage you to reach out to us, let us know, and we'd be more than happy to get material in your hands to help disciple you, and we'd love to help plug you into a local church. So reach out to us if you made that decision.
I'm not a part of that either.
On the road to the city with the sun shining bright, Jesus saw a fig tree with no fruit in sight. He spoke to the tree, "You'll never grow again," and withered it down from the roots to the end. A lesson for all who don't bear his fruit. Faith's not a show, it's deep in the root. Just like the fig tree, we can fall short without love or truth. We're barren in heart. Oh, great are the ways of the Lord, like the platypus in the wild, held untold, unfathomable, mysterious, divine. We follow the path where the cross will shine. Then there's the platypus, so odd, so strange. A beaver's body with a bill to arrange. God's creation, a curious mix. A creature that defies all our logic and tricks. But we all can be like that, a little out of place, in a world that's lost its way, seeking grace. With love that's wild, with truth that's free, we're all called by his glorious grace. Oh, great are the ways of the Lord, hearts full of fire. They gave all they had to follow his desire. Through pain, through loss, through blood that was shed, in his name they walked though their bodies were dead. Through the strange and the wild, we let his love flow. Martyrdom's call may seem harsh, but we stand with the cross in our hearts and his love that will